Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes, and the program is Everything Co-op. This month, we are honoring people that have been inducted into the Hall of Fame for 2023. We've had two people on, Marie Smith, the first week of September, and Linda Leaks was on last week. And this week, we have Leslie Mead, who is a retired executive director of the Cooperative Development Foundation. Good morning, Leslie.
Good morning, Vern.
And how are you today?
I'm great.
Okay. And what part of the world are you in today?
I am in Arlington, Virginia, which is my home.
Okay. So, Leslie, let's talk about you a little bit here. How did you get involved with co-ops?
Well, it isn't a particularly glamorous story. I had graduated from the Indiana University School of Law, and my soon-to-be husband had gotten a job with a law firm in Washington, D.C., and I needed a job and sent out a lot of letters and got a job interview with the National Council of Farmer Cooperatives, which is a trade association that represents farmer cooperatives, obviously, and they had a legal department, and interviewed there and was hired, but really had no background in cooperatives. The work was predominantly tax and antitrust, and lobbying. At the time, the National Council of Farmer Cooperatives, and they still do, have a committee of lawyers and accountants from across the United States that are quite active in shaping and talking about sharing information on the tax treatment of cooperatives, a very valuable service to their members.
So how long did you do this?
And I think I retired I left there in 96, from 84 to 96.
Did you know about co-ops before you went to NCFC?
No, I did not. In fact, it was a learning experience, and I attribute my success there to just tremendous mentorship from my boss, Jim Krasminski, who was the general counsel, and Jim really oriented me both to the rigors of law and the background of cooperatives, particularly farmer cooperatives, and that served me incredibly well. And I frequently think of how lucky I was to have that type of mentorship early in my life.
So you got that mentorship. Did you have an opportunity to be mentors of people throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably one of the most important things that you can do in your career. And yes, I've tried to be a mentor to people, young people, as they've come up. So
I find in the co-op world, as I've gotten to know it, and I got no training in my formal education either about co-ops. I thought maybe because of Indiana, and there's a lot of farmers in Indiana, that maybe you would have gotten some experience of co-ops growing up. But, okay, you didn't.
No, my father worked in managed a factory, so.
And my father worked on the railroad, so there was no cooperation in either one of those. So what did you do after the National Council of Farmer Cooperatives? You were there for 13 years.
Yeah. Well, while I was there, I moved from the legal department to become the vice president of the education arm of NCFC. And at that time, they put on something called the NICE conference, the National Institute of Cooperative Education. And I did that for a number of years. And then in 96, I resigned. I was pregnant with my first child and stayed home, and took care of my kids for a number of years.
Before you go further, your degree is in law. How did you transfer from legal department to VP of education?
Well, I mean, a lot of, part of it was opportunity. It was a substantial promotion, but essentially cooperatives are a legal entity, right? Mm-hmm. So understanding, what a cooperative is part of that education. And I find that people who understand what a cooperative is, the contractual relationship between the cooperative and the member, its position in terms of tax and other things, a strong grounding in that makes for happier members. I often have felt that sometimes we oversell cooperatives to make them seem like they can deliver more than they really can, and that creates unhappy members and I think does not garner success in cooperatives. So I thought that there was a real logical connection between the law background, really a serious foundation in understanding what a cooperative was, and the education. So
the education work, was that normally the principal 5 of education information, training education information? Is that what the umbrella you were working under?
Yes. And, early on when farmer cooperatives were started, there was a lot of government involvement in cooperatives at that time. This National Institute of Cooperative Education was a week-long program. People would come for a whole week and learn about, how do you do accounting for cooperatives and how do you run member meetings and, just the real nuts and bolts of running cooperatives, because people were starting up cooperatives all over the country. As time progressed and these co-ops became much more established, the programs became sort of more nuanced in competing in the global market and that sort of thing.
Okay. National Institute of Cooperative Education, is that still around? I've not heard of it.
It isn't, no.
Okay. All right, so you law, education, housewife.
Yeah.
Okay. That's...
Yeah. While I was home with the kids, I was involved in a preschool cooperative. And then I also was the executive administrator of the Association of Cooperative Educators, and later the executive director of the Cooperative Foundation. So I worked part-time in those positions, keeping up my contacts in cooperatives and, when doing whatever it was needed with small children in the house.
So let's go to the school.
Mm-hmm.
So was that school where your children were in, and was that school a co-op?
It was a preschool cooperative in Arlington. It was, all parent run. It had a paid executive director and paid teachers, but the parents worked in the cooperative and managed and governed the cooperative. It was a wonderful experience for the children, and probably even more so for the parents that were involved, because I think we learned a lot about leadership. We learned a lot about childcare and parenting through our involvement in the cooperative.
So
we get to work in classrooms.
So this preschool cooperative in Arlington, was it owned by the parents?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a consumer co-op. The parents owned it and then hired management and teachers.
Yeah, and then the parents worked as the teachers' aides and were, on the board, directors, and did the fundraising and all those things.
So was this very expensive compared to other preschools, or?
No, it was. It's a funny thing. We were talking before the program because the parents served as the teacher's aide. The cost was fairly reasonable, but you had to have a job that either you were a stay-at-home mother or father, or you were sort of a white-collar worker that had flexibility in their jobs. And this is in the 90s when we had less flexibility, I think, in our jobs, so that you could take off and go work in the classroom, because at that time, like, your nanny couldn't do it or whatever. So there was an expense in terms of your time, and the setup excluded, I think, a lot of people who didn't have that kind of flexibility. So it's one of those systemic operational things that co-ops get into about who are we excluding just by the way you set up process.
Right.
The setup is. Mm-hmm.
I just found that there's a co-op school in Greenbelt, and there's one in a school in D.C. And with the parents' involvement, I get the sense that the parents like it and feel like the students are getting what they want them to get. I started to say they're getting better education, but I don't want to go label that. But at least it's the parents like what the students are getting, and they get it at a lower price, but they have to spend time in there. So you're right. Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned ACE and you mentioned the foundation. We're going to take our first break and then come back and talk about those experiences. And I really want to get into whether the benefits of co-op that you found out. Again, you didn't grow up in a co-op on a farm or whatever, and you didn't get it in your formal education. You got it in your first job. So let's talk about what you've learned about co-ops, and when we come back from the break, we'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial.
This is WOL News Talk 1450 AM and 95.9 FM 959.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oaks, and the program is Everything Co-op. We have Leslie Mead, attorney Leslie Mead, on with us today, and we're going over how she got introduced to co-ops and her tremendous career in the world of cooperation. So, Leslie, before we took break, we were talking about you working in a preschool co-op in Arlington, being a member there and working in there as you're raising your children. And then you said you were part-time in ACE. So what is ACE and what did you do there?
Well, I was with the National Council of Farmer Cooperatives. I came in, I did a lot of work with William Nelson, who is also a member of the Hall of Fame, and at that time was the head of the CHS Foundation. And when I stepped down from NCFC, he asked me if I would be interested in running the Association of Cooperative Educators. And that sounded great to me. The Association of Cooperative Educators is a membership organization that has members around the world, but predominantly in Puerto Rico, the United States, and Canada. And they did a newsletter, an annual conference, tended to be people who were at either in education roles at cooperatives and at university level educators, so people from the University of Wisconsin Center for Cooperatives or the Saskatchewan Center for Cooperatives, and So I wrote the newsletter and did everything involved in running the association, managed the conference. And then at that time, I also worked with the Cooperative Foundation, which gave grants for cooperative education. And that was a particularly rewarding experience because we had the opportunity to sort of, we didn't have a ton of money in the foundation, but we had our finger on the pulse enough that we could put money early on into projects that were just getting off the ground. So I think we contributed substantially to the worker co-op movement, early in its development, and and you've seen how that sector has grown in recent years.
So, all the way back to ACE, they just had their annual conference in Puerto Rico, I think the beginning of this month. Are you still involved with them?
No, I'm not. I didn't go to the conference, but yeah, I keep track of them.
Yeah, I keep saying I'm going to join that organization because I've taught 10 years in my career, and I like teaching, and I like being in environments where education is being transferred, particularly this co-op education. Yeah, that seemed like it would be just an honor to work with educators, co-op educators.
It's, I think ACE is particularly valuable in that you do have that university level academic involved, and and the international aspect of it. So you hear what's going on in French Canada. You hear about Prairie Canada, the South America, Latin America, and all of those things really can inform your thinking and co-op development.
Okay, so you went to the foundation, and the foundation gave grants for people to become educated?
So some of it was cooperative education grants. Some of it was the development of cooperative education materials. Some of it was just co-op development work, but primarily focus on education.
All right. So you also did some work with the Ralph K. Morris Foundation. What is the Ralph K. Morris Foundation, and what work did you do there?
So Ralph K. Morris was a really important attorney in the upper Midwest working farmer cooperatives. And when he died, his friends and family set up a foundation that would support cooperative development and education. He was a strong promoter of cooperative education. And I was asked to develop sort of a plan for how they could distribute that money. And what we came up with was a way that the foundation could give money to people who wanted to attend cooperative education programs. So you could self-identify that you wanted to go to ACE, or you wanted to go to Up and Coming. It was a fairly easy application, and the Morris Foundation could give you both tuition and travel support to go to those meetings. I think it was really an effective tool for expanding the universe of people who were attending cooperative education meetings.
So I was at the Up and Coming conference, and that's for people starting food co-ops throughout the U.S. And I think there were 266 people there this past week. And somebody from Ralph K. Morris, I don't have his name, it was announced that they had funded so many scholarships for people to come, because a lot of people there are starting food co-ops and they don't have any money. Okay.
Right.
They're raising the money to start the food co-op. And so the Ralph K. Morris Foundation was funding them to be at the conference, which I thought was great.
Yes, I think that the Ralph K. Morris, they've evolved so that they give kind of block grants to organizations to help provide scholarships as well. But I think they've done more to sort of democratize the attendance at these meetings than any other foundation around. They really should be applauded.
Well, that's what I'm just doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to know more about them, so you just gave me the opportunity to know more about the Ralph K. Morris Foundation, and they are helping to fund education of co-ops. And in this world, it was food co-ops, and I would say of the 266 people, I wouldn't be surprised if 100 were African Americans throughout the U.S., from California to New York and everywhere in between, it seems, that are starting food co-ops. And again, some of these people wouldn't have had the money to be there, and the foundation gave scholarships. I don't know who they gave the scholarships to. That was not announced. But yeah, that was great. And it was a great conference. So how did you get to the Cooperative Development Foundation?
So I think that was part of the Old Girls Network. Judy Ziwatz, who is also in the Hall of Fame, and I think has been involved in cooperatives most of her life, was filling in at CDF after the executive director resigned, and she asked me if I was interested in applying for the position, and I applied with a number of other people and was selected. It was a good time in my life to go back to work, and it was a fortuitous opportunity. Those things don't come around very often, but a lot of life is who you know, right?
Mm-hmm. So how long were you the executive director of the Cooperative Development Foundation?
7 years. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So your kids are older now, and you could do that work full time?
Yeah, I think they were in high school when I went back to CDF, and now they're out on their own. So. Yeah.
Okay, so what does CDF do? Just what's their mission, if you will? What's their purpose?
So there's, I think, 3 things. They give grants. They do programmatic work where they receive grants from, say, USDA or the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, other places. And then they host the Hall of Fame, so honor cooperative innovators. So those are, I think, the 3 areas that CDF works in.
So it's grants to help start co-ops?
Some of it's grants to help start co-ops, some of it's education grants, scholarships.
We'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial. We're going to find out more about what CDF is and what Leslie Mead has done in there. We'll be right back.
News Talk 1450 WOL-AM, where information is power.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes, and the program is Everything Cooperative. Leslie, next month, October, we will celebrate 10 years on the air. It's been an exciting 10 years, and I just consistently and continue to learn about the different segments of cooperation. And NCB, National Co-op Bank, has been our sponsor all of these 10 years. NCB's mission is to support and be an advocate for America's cooperatives and their members, especially in low-income communities, by providing innovative financial and related services. And from everything I can tell, they do a really, really good job of that, and it's just a pleasure working with them through these 10 years. And I assume CDF has worked with NCB a little bit through the years. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Chuck Snyder, past president of the bank, was on our board. NCB has been a huge supporter of the race that we do. CDF does a fundraising race, and the Hall of Fame just put both time and money and staff into many CDF endeavors. Couldn't have done it without NCB. Huge supporter of cooperative education all around.
Yes. So you had a huge staff, didn't you, while you were executive director?
Oh yeah, a huge staff of about 2.5. Yeah, that's sometimes you think back and you think, why didn't we do more of this or that? And then you realize, and then you think, when you're in an under-resourced organization, you do what you can. And I think we've been really proud of what we have been able to accomplish at CDF, and Mary Griffin continues to accomplish great things there.
So Mary Griffin took over the HAM after you left?
Mm-hmm. Yes, she's the executive director with Kirsty Boyette, who is just integral to that staff as well.
So you mentioned the three things before the break of grants and programmatic kinds of things with Department of Agriculture or other organizations, and then host of the Hall of Fame. But when I go to the CDF's webpage, under funds and grants, they talk about the Cooperative Development Fund, the Cooperative Education Fund, and Disaster Recovery Fund. So I guess one of the things that I've liked is this Disaster Recovery Fund. Can you talk about that, and when did that get started?
Oh gosh, that was before my time. I think it got started in a big way with the Katrina disaster. CDF raised a lot of money to help with Katrina, not recovery, but sort of economic development after Katrina. I believe that CDF worked with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives in working in those areas to help people impacted by the Katrina disaster to, get back on their feet, set up co-ops, and rebuild co-ops that had been damaged by the disaster. Over the years since then, we use it for hurricane recovery. NRECA has been a huge participant in donor to the fund, and also at the international level, we've earthquake recovery, where co-op operations have been damaged in El Salvador or wherever, and we can provide support to get those co-ops back on their feet.
Yeah, I was just excited. I've been consulting to help support a property management company that works with ROC mobile home parks. That's mobile home parks in Colorado, and CDF came through and helped these mobile home parks. They had terrible snows and high winds and all kinds of different issues, wildfires, and CDF came in to help. And I'm just really excited about having an organization that comes in and help people in times, because in bad times, and a lot of people that live in mobile home parks are low-income folks. They don't have a whole bunch of resources, so they needed the help. And I noticed Katrina was 2005. That's 8 years ago. Okay. 18.
Yeah.
So just a shout out for the disaster recovery work that you all do.
Some of the most significant work that we did while I was there was working with home care cooperatives. These are businesses that are predominantly women and immigrants, women of color who own and work in these organizations, and they tend to be real low income, not great working conditions, and the co-ops have done a lot to improve both the quality of care and the sense of pride and respect that workers feel. And CDF has worked with the co-op community to help support a meeting of home care cooperatives every year. It's held at the Cooperative Finance Corporation, which Sheldon Peterson was the president of. They donate lots of staff time and money to the program, and USDA grants have been used to support research and development of these co-ops. I think in terms of combining both the grant making and the programmatic work that CDF has done, our work in home care cooperatives has been really outstanding. And co-op development is slow work, but progressively we've developed more of these co-ops. They do an annual report every year on the co-op development. I think it's increased by about 100% in the time, in the last 8 years that we've worked on it. So in terms of looking back at, what co-ops can do for people to improve their lives, and, what I feel personally proud of, that work in the home care cooperatives has been, one of the high points of my career.
So let's talk about that a minute. I am in the baby boomer cohort. So my sister had a stroke a year ago, February, and I've got a real close friend that had a massive stroke. And getting home health care workers that are good is difficult. I've got another friend in California that's been she goes through home health care workers. And sometimes money is not the problem, but it's finding somebody to do the work. So getting a good worker that's trained and has the right attitude for helping somebody that can't help themselves in most cases. And how does being a co-op help the worker first, and then how does it being a co-op help the client?
Yeah, I think being a co-op can really help the worker in that they have support. They are working for people who understand what that job is. The focus of the co-op, because it's a worker co-op, really is on the satisfaction of the worker and the quality of the care. You have better communication between the co-op and the worker, so that a better understanding of the kind of training they need. It's incredibly isolating work being a home care provider. It's you and the client. There isn't a lot of support, for both on how you're doing your job, people saying, oh, you're doing a great job, you're not doing a great job, and getting support in terms of how do I do my job better. The co-op provides that kind of feedback to its workers, its worker owners, right? There's more job satisfaction, more respect.
So what about the client, the worker has an ability to say what their schedule is? Does that happen in a co-op? Where in a non-co-op, they may not have that ability to just go when the person tells them they've got to go?
So I think what you have with the co-op is you have backup too. If your child is sick or you can't, you can only work certain days. The co-op is more flexible in finding someone else to come in or put you into a position where, working with another client or that better fits your schedule. In the end, co-ops can't do everything. And, people clients have to be served and have to be served well, and people have to be there when they have to be there. So there isn't anything about a co-op that says, makes you, not have to fill those work duties. But there is more flexibility and planning in in meeting those requirements of the job. And training, too.
Training. Back to training. So you have been working with the home health care field for about 8 years, having an annual meeting, helping people to start home health care co-ops and getting the training they need, the workers getting the training they need to give better quality care. Yeah. And so I did have on the show the executive director of, or the president of the home health care worker in New York that has 1,500 members, worker owners. And he was telling me not only do they do everything that we just talked about, but they also advocate through the U.S. government that Medicare will pay a better salary because there's a limit on it, and therefore it's hard to get the worker the kind of salary that they need and deserve given the amount of work. Because it's not easy work either. It can be very difficult.
It is not easy work. Yeah, and everybody needs home care, will eventually need some sort of home care, but the government pay is low.
We've got to take our final break, and we're going to come back and talk about the future of CDF and all of the work with co-ops. We'll be right back.
News Talk 1450 WOL AM, where information is power.
Information is power is WOL's motto, and they've been a great partner these 10 years also. But I got to tell you, Leslie, it's not information. Information is stored up power. You don't get the power until you get into action. You have to take that information, that knowledge, and put it into action. And a guy named Papa Sin from Senegal was on the show that first month we were on, October 10 years ago. And that was the first thing he said to me. You got to get into action. And so CDF has been in action under your direction. And we've talked about the grants, a little bit about programmatic kinds of things. But let's talk about the Hall of Fame before we get to the future. The Hall of Fame this year's inductees will happen on October the 5th. And you're one of those inductees. How does it feel to be an inductee of the Hall of Fame?
Honestly, a little mortifying. I have spent most of my career trying not to be the center of attention. So this is, this took some adjustment for me to get my head around. I feel as though, I should be at the podium with about 200 other people who have helped me through my life. So. It's an honor, and that doesn't, maybe some people feel like they deserve it, but I certainly don't feel that way.
Well, I think you make a great point, and most people that get inducted into the Hall of Fame in the co-op world talks about real quickly, there's these 200 other people. It's a group thing, and we work in cooperation. I might be up front leading the charge, but it's the 200 people to make things happen. Or in the case of CDF, it was 2.5 people with a lot of support from other organizations like NCB, and that would make things. And I found it interesting when you said that NCB would use their staff to help the Hall of Fame or other organizations, or the race, the 5K race. So you get a whole lot of other people working with you, and that's a great leader. So, yeah, that's what you are.
Well, and NCB is a sponsor of this program, and they are just front and center in co-op support. But there are so many others too. I mean, CoBank has been a terrific supporter of CDF, and the rural electric, CFC. I just can go on and on about the support that the co-op community has given CDF, and in turn, we've been able to reach out to people who haven't don't fall outside those established co-op circles. So have been able to help in the worker co-op area and food co-op, and have done some work with indigenous people, and those contributions from those established organizations come from the goodness of their heart and they're the principle of cooperating among cooperatives. So
Yep.
we've been very fortunate.
That's Principle 6 of 7 Principles of Cooperation among co-ops. So if somebody wanted to get a ticket to the dinner on October the 5th, how would they do that?
I think you would go to the CDF website. It's cdf.coop. No, I'm sorry. You would go to the Hall of Fame website, which is heroes.coop, and you can get a ticket there.
Okay. So go to heroes.coop.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm on that web page, and 50th anniversary. Okay.
You may have at this point call. I think that the last thing I saw was there were 23 tickets left.
Okay, so tickets are $300 per person, and gets you into the reception and the dinner. And the last you heard, there were 23 tickets. The reason I was asking, I had heard that they were full, but they may not be. So just go to heroes.coop.
Yes.
And then you go to sponsorship and tickets, which is all the way into the right on the header. Sponsorship and tickets to see about. I'm sure you can still donate. Okay.
I just got a text from Kirsty that says they're sold out.
Yeah, I thought I had heard that. And at $300 a ticket, that's really saying something, because it is a fundraiser to help you with all of the different kinds of things that CDF does that we've talked about here, and others that we haven't talked about. So that's the Co-op Hall of Fame. Congratulations on being an inductee this year. You deserve it. I've been on the selection committee maybe 7 years out of the last 10, and you deserve it. Even though you might have wanted to work in the back behind the mic, or so people didn't see, or you just got work done, you're out there now. So good. You deserve it. What do you see the future of co-ops?
Well, being the parent of 20-somethings, I really see that generation, their lives are going to be significantly different than the life that I've led. And I think that, with climate change and the price of housing and population growth, that the things that they will aspire to and the way that they will live are going to be different than what we had aspired to or what was available to us. And so I see that there's a role for cooperatives in meeting some of the needs of this new generation. I mean, for instance, in Arlington, we just went in and we just approved zoning that got rid of single-family housing, and so we'll have multifamily housing across the county, in neighborhoods. Now, those houses could be, you can have up to a sixplex. Those houses could be condos or they could be co-ops.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about whether we could see that kind of cooperative development in these smaller unit, scattered site housing. I think that it would be ideal for a cooperative to have a small unit development. Shared cars. I just think there's a lot of opportunities here for young people to think about cooperatives. And cooperatives were formed to meet a need, whether it was electricity, housing, banking with credit unions. And so looking at what we have, what the world looks like now, and say, what is the need for the future? And I think co-ops have a role in that, particularly in housing.
Yeah, housing is very expensive, and it's amazing how expensive it's gotten in the last 10 to 20 years. So your children, my grandchildren, they are looking at, $1 million homes if they wanted to buy a house.
Right.
So, yeah, let's do multifamily. So what would you like to leave people with, Leslie Mead? What's your last thought? 1 minute.
Okay, I guess my last thought is none of us got where we are on our own, and look around and see who you can help, who you can give good mentorship to, and have honest conversations with to, build the next group of leaders, because in the end, that's probably the most important thing that you can do in your life.
And that's what co-ops do. Leslie, thank you very much. And everybody out there, we'll be back next Thursday to talk to our last Hall of Famer for this year. Please live cooperatively.
News Talk 1450 WOL AM, where information is power.